Stevie Nicks has survived heartbreak, tragedy, addiction, and endless drama. Yet somehow, at 75, she's still out here singing about it. From gifted child to rock goddess, here are some things you may not know about the unstoppable, ever-changing musician. Born Stephanie Lynn Nicks in Phoenix, Arizona, Stevie Nicks got her nickname due to the way she pronounced her name as a child. Her mother, Barbara Nicks, told the Arizona Republic how little Stevie loved fairy tales, saying, "I would read Stevie the stories over and over, and she would just sit there enraptured." For her part in 1980, Stevie told Rolling Stone her mother was overprotective, explaining, "All out of love, but I was kept in more than most people were." Early on, her grandfather, a country singer who never achieved the stardom he wanted, recognized Stevie's talent and took her under his wing.
He would sing different crazy country songs for me, and we would actually be able to pump out a little duet here and there.
When she was 5, he wanted to bring her on stage to sing with him, but her parents refused, leading to a long family rift. Still, Stevie knew from an early age that her future lay in music, telling HuffPost, "I just wanted to listen to rockabilly and rock and roll and R&B, and I just was in my own little musical world." When she was a teenager, Nicks told her parents she wanted to pursue a music career. They weren't surprised, but she told High Times that her father had a strong opinion on the matter. Nicks shared, "My dad was very successful and very ambitious. He said, if you're going to do this, you better be the very best."
I wanted to go to hairdressing school, and my parents insisted I go to college to be a second-grade teacher, and I turned out a rock and roll singer.
Nicks was an 18-year-old California high school student when she was at a party and saw long-haired teenager Lindsey Buckingham playing his guitar and singing California Dreamin'. She sat down next to him and joined in perfect harmony. They didn't see one another again for 2 years, until Buckingham's drummer asked her if she wanted to sing with them. For the next 3 years, Buckingham and Nicks were bandmates, each dating someone else. Changed when the two decided to head to Los Angeles to launch themselves as a musical duo. "Our relationship happened because I wanted to move to LA, and I don't think either of us would have been brave enough to get in the car and drive to LA alone." Calling themselves Buckingham Nicks, they figured their big break had arrived when they were signed to a major label and released their debut album. Unfortunately, the album went nowhere, and their label dropped them. To make ends meet, Nicks worked as a waitress, while Buckingham played guitar with the Everly Brothers' Don Everly on what ended up being a disastrous tour. But destiny was waiting right around the corner. Fleetwood Mac was founded in 1967 as a blues outfit, but the band had churned through a seemingly endless stream of singers and guitarists, and by 1974, they were in disarray. That's when the core group, drummer Mick Fleetwood, bassist John McVie, and his then-wife, singer-keyboardist Christine McVie, heard Lindsey Buckingham in a Los Angeles recording studio. Fleetwood was impressed by Buckingham's skills as a guitarist and singer-songwriter, and invited him to join the band. Buckingham accepted, but on one condition. He and Stevie Nicks were a package deal. Both Buckingham and Nicks realized Fleetwood Mac could be the opportunity they'd been working toward. However, by that point, their relationship was already fraying. In an interview with Billboard, Nicks recalled, "We were breaking up when Fleetwood Mac asked us to join. I said, okay, this is what we've been working for since 1968. And so, Lindsey, you and I have to sew this relationship back up. We have too much to lose here."
Our breaking up is not going to break up this band. And I'm not going to quit, and neither are you.
They joined Fleetwood Mac, which now had 3 powerful vocalists who wrote catchy pop songs. The band's 1975 self-titled album was their biggest success to date, thanks to hits like Monday Morning, written by Buckingham, Nicks' compositions Rhiannon and Landslide, and Christine McVie's Over My Head and Say You Love Me. When Fleetwood Mac went into the studio to work on their follow-up album, Rumors, the relationship between Nicks and Buckingham had seriously deteriorated. Meanwhile, John and Christine McVie's marriage was also unraveling, while Mick Fleetwood was in the midst of a divorce. Add monumental pressure and an unlimited supply of cocaine, and it wasn't the ideal environment to make a great album. Speaking to Rolling Stone about that time, Christine McVie said, "Imagine the tension of living with someone 24 hours a day, on the road, in an already stressful situation, with the added negativity of too much alcohol. It just blew apart."
When you're in Fleetwood Mac and when you have shows to do and other stuff to do, you can't bring your private life into that.
Despite all the uncoupling, Rumors was Fleetwood Mac's magnum opus, selling more than 40 million copies and becoming one of the top 10 biggest-selling albums in history. Powered by a string of hits, Go Your Own Way, Don't Stop, Dreams, and You Make Loving Fun, Rumors ruled Top 40 radio in 1977. For Nicks, however, her greatest professional success was in direct contrast to the misery in her personal life, as she and Buckingham split up while remaining bandmates. In 1990, she told Woman's Own, "It was like a living nightmare. He and I were about as compatible as a boa constrictor and a rat." An already fraught situation became even more so when Nicks and Fleetwood had a brief, ill-considered affair. The fling ended when Fleetwood began seeing Nicks' best friend, Sarah Record, who subsequently became his wife. For Nicks and the other members of the band, those months were rife with tension. Nicks told Mojo, "We weren't talking to each other very much. We were there, but looking past each other. Everybody was nervous. Is she going to burst into tears and leave?" While she and Fleetwood have remained close, Nicks regrets their affair.
What happened wasn't a good thing. It was doomed. It was a doomed thing, caused a lot of pain for everybody, led to nothing.
After the stress of making Rumors and its 1979 follow-up, Tusk, Stevie Nicks pulled back from the band to focus on a solo album.
I make you a promise, Fleetwood Mac, that I am not going to break up Fleetwood Mac ever. I promise.
The result was Belladonna, released in 1981. The album went to #1 and remained in the top 200 on the Billboard charts for more than 2 years. Taking all she'd learned from her experience in one of the all-time great rock bands, Nicks' gift for songwriting flourished, displaying her versatility in a collection that veered from tender ballads to rough rockers. She teamed up with contemporaries like Tom Petty on Stop Dragging My Heart Around and Don Henley on Leather and Lace, and defined herself artistically in the song that remains her signature, The Edge of 17. Nicks went on to release many more solo albums, all while remaining a member of Fleetwood Mac. As she explained in a 2016 interview with the New York Times, being a part of Fleetwood Mac and a solo artist are two very different experiences. One a democracy, the other a dictatorship. Nicks explained, "I love being part of a team. We argue all the time, but we always have. In my band, there is no arguing. I am the boss. My solo career is probably the reason Fleetwood Mac is still together in 2016, because I was always happy to leave Fleetwood Mac, and I was always happy to come back too." Skyrocketing to fame in one of the world's biggest rock bands was disconcerting for Nicks. One way in which she coped was by using cocaine. A lot of it. As she told Uncut, "It's so intense and so heavy, and being like Fleetwood Mac was like being in the army. I was doing a lot of drugs just to get me through to the next thing. I don't remember how much we did, but we spent an awful lot of money on it."
I used to carry a gram of cocaine in my boot at all times.
For a while, cocaine kept Nicks moving forward and productive until it didn't. The wake-up call came in the form of a doctor's warning.
I went to a plastic surgeon, and he looked in my nose and said, "You have a really big hole in your nose, and it's very dangerous."
In 1986, at the end of a 7-month tour, she checked herself into the Betty Ford Center. Nicks admitted, "I knew I was going to die, and I didn't want to die. I did my 28 days, and I came out, and I was brilliant. I was as strong as an ox, and I felt great." And according to Nicks, she hasn't touched cocaine since. While Nicks felt she'd beaten her cocaine addiction, her friends were concerned she'd relapse and convinced her to see a psychiatrist. That doctor prescribed Klonopin, a drug that, among other things, curbs the desire for cocaine. But Nicks recalled, "He gave me 2 little blue pills, one at morning and one at night. Within a couple of months, that turned into 4 little blue pills. Then it became 15 blue pills. He kept increasing my dose." Nicks had unintentionally traded one addiction for another. Remembering that time to Uncut, she said, "I was sick and high and miserable and overweight. I knew I was going to die. So I called up my manager and said, 'Come and get me and take me to a hospital because I'm not going to be alive in 2 weeks.'"
This drug was more deadly than the coke for me.
As tough as it was to kick cocaine at the Betty Ford Center, that was a proverbial walk in the park compared to the 48 days she spent detoxing from Klonopin. Nicks shared, "My hair turned gray, my skin peeled off, I couldn't sleep. I had a terrible headache. My body felt like it was burning." After collaborating with Tom Petty on Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Nicks sang with him on several more songs, including Petty's The Insider, as well as I Will Run to You from Nicks' 1983 album The Wild Heart. Nicks wasn't just a collaborator, she was also a fan, admitting to Rolling Stone, "Had Tom Petty called me up one day and said, 'If you want to leave Fleetwood Mac to be in the Heartbreakers, there's a place for you,' I might very well have done it, anytime, today, because it's my favorite band." While Nicks might have quit Fleetwood Mac to become a heartbreaker, Petty, who died in 2017 at age 66, insisted he'd never let that happen because of his admiration for Fleetwood Mac. Still, Petty and Nicks became lifelong friends. As Nicks told Billboard, Petty proved his friendship when she came out of rehab and asked him to help her write a song, sharing, "I was still in a fragile state after 48 days of hell in rehab, and Tom said, 'You don't need help to write a song. You just need to get over this experience that bummed you out so bad. The relationship you were in is over. It was over a long time ago, and you need to move on.'" During the years that Nicks and Buckingham were together in Fleetwood Mac, they spent far more time together than they had when they were a couple. Despite that fact, and the sublime music they continued to make together, their relationship never really recovered. And things really hit the skids in April 2018, when Buckingham was fired. The band announced he'd be replaced on their upcoming tour by Crowded House's Neil Finn and Mike Campbell, lead guitarist of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Buckingham sued and was informed by the band's longtime manager, Irving Azoff, that Nicks had given the band an ultimatum. Either Buckingham was out or she was. According to Buckingham, Azoff told him, "Stevie never wants to be on a stage with you again." But despite his acrimonious exit, Buckingham admitted he'd consider a return to Fleetwood Mac. During a February 2024 appearance on the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast, he said, "If there's more to come from Fleetwood Mac, if there's a way to heal that would be great. It would be very appropriate to close on a more circular note." When Nicks first hit the stage with Fleetwood Mac in the 1970s, her now iconic style was seemingly already fully formed. Flowing chiffon dresses, topped by fringe shawls, accented by platform boots, and the occasional top hat.
There were a certain sort of women in the 70s. Their handbags would always have kind of, a packet of tarot cards, maybe a couple of bones.
In fact, Nicks had been honing her style for years, beginning when she was a teenager in the thrall of female rockers Janis Joplin and Grace Slick, shopping at the same San Francisco clothing store they frequented. Speaking with The Independent, Nicks described the look she was going for, saying, "English Dickensian waif in a shabby, raggedy black chiffon skirt and heavy boots. I thought, if I'm going to take this really seriously, I'm going to plan this all out." In a 2009 New York Times interview, Nicks admitted her signature style was also a bit of a disguise meant to hide her true self, saying, "I need a uniform. I'll be very, very sexy under 18 pounds of chiffon and lace and velvet, and nobody will know who I really am." And she told The Independent that she realized it was a look that needed to endure, explaining, "Right then, I thought, since I plan to do this when I'm 60, I want to make sure that what I wear now, I can still wear when I'm 60. There was no truer sign that Nicks had succeeded and achieved fashion icon status than when Mattel unveiled its Stevie Nicks Barbie doll. After her bitter split from Lindsey Buckingham, Nicks had other romantic entanglements, and due to her own status as a rock goddess, it shouldn't be surprising that some of those love affairs were with other rock stars. Among them was Don Henley, the Eagles star with whom she shared one of her biggest hits, Leather and Lace. In an interview with Billboard, Nicks confirmed Henley's previous admission that she'd become pregnant during their affair, and that she'd chosen to terminate the pregnancy, sharing, "Had I married Don and had that baby, and had she been a girl, I would have named her Sarah." Nicks confirmed that her song Sarah was in part about the unborn baby.
That's why I say don't go out with rock stars. It never ends well.
Interestingly, Nicks also fell in love with another member of the Eagles, guitarist Joe Walsh. In an interview with The Telegraph, she revealed that their love affair lasted from 1983 to 1986, saying, "My great love was Joe Walsh. We were probably the perfect, complete, crazy pair. He was the one that I would have married, and that I would probably have changed my life around for. A little bit, not a lot."
Well, the relationship came and ran its course, as rock and roll relationships do.
She said they broke up because they were both heavily addicted to drugs at the time, and that Walsh ended things because he felt that if they continued, one or both of them would end up dead. As Nicks recalled, "We were a couple on the way to hell." One aspect of Stevie Nicks' career that her fans may not be aware of is her philanthropic work involving American servicemen and women who've been wounded while serving their country. It all began during a tour stop in Washington, D.C., when she accepted an invitation to visit wounded soldiers. At first, she had reservations, admitting to The Independent, "I cry really easily, and I hate hospitals." But she overcame her fears and has continued to visit patients regularly at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center and the Bethesda Naval Hospital. Those visits inspired her to launch her foundation in 2006, Stevie Nicks' Band of Soldiers. At first, the foundation had a uniquely musical purpose: to supply wounded military personnel with iPods loaded with music Nicks hoped would be inspirational and healing for them. In fact, Nicks has devoted so much of her time to this effort that she set a record. In 2015, Military Times reported that she held the USO record for the most hours spent over 5 years visiting military personnel who'd been wounded in combat. According to Nicks, there's nothing political about what she does. Speaking with Ultimate Classic Rock, she explained, "You can't have an opinion if you're going to walk through the doors of Walter Reed or Bethesda. All you can do is support what's happened."
It's not about the war at that point. It's just about the kids who came home from the war.
The most recent iteration of Fleetwood Mac, without Lindsey Buckingham, may well have been the final one, or at least that's what Stevie Nicks thinks. According to her, the 2022 death of Christine McVie was the end of the band. She told Vulture, "We did go out on the road and do a year-and-a-half tour with Neil Finn and Mike Campbell. We had a really great time, and it was a huge tour. That was there in the realm of possibility. But when Christine died, I felt like you can't replace her. You just can't. Without her, what is it? You know what I mean?" As the only two women in Fleetwood Mac, Nicks and McVie formed a bond that remained unbroken through the decades. As Nicks put it, "She was like my soulmate, my musical soulmate, and my best friend that I spent more time with than any of my other best friends outside of Fleetwood Mac. Christine was my best friend." Not only did the two women protect each other, Nicks admitted she couldn't imagine being on stage, looking over to where McVie had stood behind her keyboard, and not seeing her there. She summed it up by saying, "When she died, I figured we really can't go any further with this. There's no reason." If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357.